Hello everybody, and we're back on the desktop with another retro RPG. And this week I would like to present this from my collection, Living Steel, which was perhaps the first role-playing game I never bought, which seems like an odd statement. You see, when I went to buy a role-playing game, there was a small gaming store in the town where I grew up. And I looked around and I saw this and I fell in love with the look of it. The design is fantastic. It was actually in a box set, the original one. This is one obviously I picked up later, because as I said, I didn't buy it. But this was on a Monday, and on the Friday before, Warhammer 40,000 had come out, or at least it had been delivered to my local gaming store. It was new, it was shiny, everybody was talking about it, so I ended up buying a copy of Warhammer 40k instead, the original Rogue Trader book. So I didn't buy this. I went in the next week with some money because I realised I bought a war game and not a role-playing game, which is what I wanted, and this wasn't there. It had been sold, the copy they'd got, so I ended up picking up Judge Dredd instead. Then, a few months later, they had it back in, but I ended up buying a game called Star Race instead. I'd never picked up Living Steel for years and years. And then I saw this very battered-looking copy. I promise you, I've not killed this book as badly as whoever owned it before. And I picked it up. And it's great. I really like it. It's a game way more towards campaign play than weekly adventures, but I'll come back to that in a second. The setup of the game is that you are the survivors of a war. It's in the far future. The 7 worlds that you were a leading warrior of was invaded. Basically, Good Federation was invaded by Bad Empire and wiped out. You fought in one of the final battles, but the commanders of your side decided that their society shouldn't die out. So they had you deep frozen and stored away to restore their federation, the 7 worlds, at some future point when the evil empire was threatened. So hundreds or thousands of years later, aliens invade. And on the world of Rhand, which is where you've been deep frozen, it's bombarded, and the evil empire is weakened. They do, however, manage to take out the command ship of the aliens. So everything's up in the air. There's the human evil side. There's weird aliens called Spectrals. And you emerge from your deep freeze to rebuild a fair and just society in big sets of living steel powered armor. High-tech, cool stuff. The people who emerge from deep freeze, every player starts with one person wearing living steel, but you'll not be playing them most of the time. You'll be playing members of the people that get rescued. As you build up your society, you'll be adventuring off as an ordinary bloke, a medic or a mechanic or whatever, who has joined the resistance to rebuild this fair and just society. Your characters don't really know much of the situation when they emerge, so it's very much a game, instead of go destroy alien command base, although the GM can do that, most of the time it's set up that, oh well, we'll liberate this village and we'll see what we get out of that. It's building your society. It's the players coming up with a plan rather than the GM telling. Which I think's a fabulous idea, but scares the living bejesus out of me, so I have never ever run it. It's also a role-playing game from the era where, instead of role-playing games being about the game and being fun, it was all about the simulation. So, Living Steel, and I believe there's a game called Laserburn as well, are games which try and make combat realistic. So you don't just get shot and take some damage. Oh, you've lost 20 hit points from that serious blow. It also causes bleeding damage. So you're shot, you survive the shot, but you'll bleed out in 6 rounds unless you're treated. It's an interesting idea, but calculating all this, and weapons go down in effectiveness by range, and it's all about simulating the world. An interesting idea, way too much effort for me. But the setting's quite good. The rulebook, which I haven't even opened yet, is fantastic. Every page has little quotes on it. Don't worry, by the time we get there, I'll have it figured out. Well, he looks dead to me. I don't care if he does have a pulse. And, you know, for the very serious tone, it does have some fun stuff going on in it. I'll also point out the introduction brings to attention that not only do you use D10s, D100s, but you also use D1000s. This is the only game I've ever seen which uses an 1,000-side dice. Normally, to roll a D100, you would roll 2 10-sided dice. One will be the units, one will be the tens. So if you roll a 9 and a 7, that's 79 or 97, depending on the way you work it out. For a D1000, you roll 3. And one is the hundreds, one's the tens, one's the digits. I have no idea in the world why you would need 1,000-side dice, but Living Steel uses it. As I said, the planet the games are set on is called Rhand. It's been bombed badly. That's another element of the game, that the world is so high-tech, they basically have Star Trek transporters. So you can move from one part of the planet to another instantly. However, the network is based on satellites, most of which were destroyed by the aliens, and there's only a couple left in operation. So, as the satellites go around the planet, you can beam up to the satellite, but not until it gets to where you're going can it relay you back down to the surface. So you can be in storage for days or weeks while the satellites do the orbit. And during that time, no time passes for you. So you can go on a mission, you can arrive at a destination only to find the situation has totally changed. You can call on reinforcements which will arrive much later. If you've got wounded people, you can transfer them back up to the satellites where they'll remain stored and get back to base. But there'll only be certain pickup times when the satellite's overhead. So if you get delayed, you can miss your pickup and be stuck in a place for extra time. Which is why having all these other characters is important. If your Living Steel characters are stuck for many weeks off in one area of the planet while something else is going on, you might have to send your B-team characters to go and deal with it. And because of these situations, you won't all want to play your Living Steel characters because you might need one of them for a later mission while everybody else is stuck in transit. It's a very interesting idea, and I think it's a very compelling one to make the storyline, the campaign play far more interesting. Lots of funky pictures of guns. They're all very angled, very as if you put them in italics. The other thing, if I can go to the sort of monsters section, you've got these large dragon creatures which were aliens known before the invasion, who are enemies. You've got the Spectrals, who are the current enemies. But you've also got other humans. So while the evil side is pretty much out of operation because they've been wiped out, the aliens have bombed the planet and infected people with virally induced psycho disorder or something. They're called Vissers. And they are people who are insane. They will happily murder and turn on each other and all that because they've picked up these insanities. The structures of society have collapsed. There aren't a whole load of pictures in it. That's the one I was looking for powered armor. Isn't it pretty? Doesn't it look nice? But there's not a whole load of pictures in it. Role-playing games of this era were far more text-based. The game details the sort of bunker that you awake in. It's underneath a house. You emerge into the house on the edge of a valley, I believe, from your deep freeze beneath. But Living Steel, it's a very interesting game. It's got some fantastic things. These, where was it? I flipped past it a second ago. I keep losing things. That's the Spectrals, who are kind of like skinless people. That seems to all be muscles and sinew over bone. Even their weapons seem to be almost grown over. You've got the lizard people. There are towers to transmit you around. And there are tables and tables of information. Because that's what role-playing games used to be. It used to be all the tables. All this information you would need. How much combat load can you carry? Your professional skills. Hit locations, odds of hitting. Just so much information, which kind of scares me off. Orca's the teleportation system. There we go. Showing when the satellites are going around the planet and when it's available. So you can beam up in different zones at different times. A map of the planet. Seems to be mainly sea. And advertising for Dragonstar Rising, which is set in the same universe but earlier in the timeline, where the Imperial Guard is fighting the Dragon Crests, which are the lizard-like aliens that I mentioned. But anyway, that's Living Steel. It's a very interesting game. I would love to have run it, but the rules I hate. And sitting down with your players and going, here's the situation, role-playing them emerging from the bunker and meeting people in the town and them being brave, heroic warriors and inspiring the people of the town, and then turning to them and going, so what are you doing now? I got a feeling I'd just be faced with a sea of blank faces as the heroes are like, we don't know. I really have no idea how to run a game like that, which leads to another of my retro RPGs I'll do, because that's another one I've not run because it's a very similar situation. But that's in the future. Here we go. Living Steel, 1987. Fascinating background, really cool concept, terrible rules, scary game to play. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you later.